Hello, this is 360 Nigeria. I am Josephine Bitrus, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to the program. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, is understandably upset about the recent report from the Auditor General of the Federation that firearms in their thousands got missing from the custody of various formations of the police force. The #1 police officer is even more worried that the issue has been thrown open, generating public interest and heated debate. In this report, correspondent Nasiru Usman examines the concerns of the Inspector General against the critical factor of public safety.
To the report from the Auditor General of the Federation, 178,459, including 88,078 AK-47 rifles, were missing from police inventory. In 2020 alone, 3,907 firearms disappeared from police armories across the country over time. The Inspector General of Police has two main worries, two objectives and two institutions in the report. The two worries are that the report by the Office of the Auditor General of the Federation is factually inaccurate and the police were not given a chance to interrogate the report before it was released. These are the issues the Inspector General has with the Auditor General. He now wants the police to be given time to do its own investigation. He also has a grudge with the Senate. The report should not have been made a matter for public debate. In fact, because it borders on national security, it should have been raised and considered behind closed doors.
Like I said earlier, this number actually that got is alleged to have been missing is a serious threat to our security. And I'm sure, like I said earlier, the IG must have will take appropriate action to ensure that the arms are recovered, and those found liable or respond for the missing of these arms will face the role of the law in line with police regulations and procedure.
I mean, the most important thing is that it is coming from the Auditor General's office, and that is a government department that has the responsibility to conduct audits and then issue reports. And the process of audit is that it would conduct the processes, submit a report to the parent organization, and then allow the parent organization to respond to the questions or queries. They call them audit queries. Now, in this instance, it appears that the period that the author gave the responsible organization, which is the Nigerian police, was to respond. It didn't respond, which now led the National Assembly, in this instance the Senate, to sit and invite both sides, the Office of the Auditor General and then the Nigerian Police Force. And it was during the sitting on the issue at the Senate that the issue came to limelight. Of course, before then, last year, snippets of the report had been released. So we knew that a number of weapons were missing from police armory from that report.
The Inspector General of Police fears that the approach adopted would damage the reputation of the police and undermine the confidence of the Nigerian population in their police force. The matter is even worse if the reputational loss within the international community is considered.
Yeah, to a large extent, this is a security issue. See, there are statements you make that can cause fear in the minds of the citizens. And also the corporate image of the force should also be considered. And we we have to be careful how we manage security information, that information management. So that is right to a large extent. But the point again is that the National Assembly has oversight function to see to this. That's why they called the IG to appear before them. They will have a duty to find out about these arms and ammunition, because this is a purchase with the public funds. There have to be accountability on those firearms. So to a large extent, we need to be careful how we manipulate security information so it doesn't cause panic. So also it does not, because the image of the force and the country is very, very critical to ourselves and to international community.
The police community seems to align with the Inspector General on matters that border national security and should not be for street conversation. And the Senate should know that. That may explain why the Senate President Godswill Akpabio will not brook any discussion of it after receiving a letter from the number 1 police officer expressing his concern on making the findings of the Auditor General a matter of open debate.
Convey my warmest regards to the Senate of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, while also conveying my profound shock and dismay at the recent events that unfolded during the Senate Committee on Public Accounts, sitting on Tuesday, 11th day of February 2025. The public vilification of the police force during the session was deeply troubling, particularly as the allegations presented were entirely rooted in factual inaccuracies. This unfortunate incident has had far-reaching consequences, perpetuating a very false narrative about our institution and the force's leadership, both domestically and internationally. The reputational damage inflicted upon our country and its public institution is unimaginable. In the light of this, I respectfully implore the Senate leadership to intervene and to grant the police force sufficient time to conduct a thorough investigation into the alleged missing firearms from the armories as of December 2020.
Well, the process of audit is laborious. One time in my life I was an auditor, so I know the process. You would sit with the organization, request for documents, conduct physical visits, and engage in interviews, in some instances even investigations, and then you come with your conclusions, upon which you now write your audit queries, as it were, and which are embedded inside the audit report. So the Nigerian Police Force had an opportunity to respond to those audit queries in the process of the conducting the audit. He didn't do that. When the report was written, I'm sure it was submitted to the Inspector General of Police and possibly to the Minister of Police Affairs, and he didn't do that. Remember, even the Senate claimed that in the instances they invited the Nigerian Police Force, they didn't show up until they threatened to take action against the Inspector General of Police before he showed up. So it appears that there is an element of negligence and lack of responsiveness on the side of the police, which may have led to what we saw in terms of the letter that you said. They probably thought it was going to be like it was in the past, where when issues like this come up and then nobody responds, then they will just sweep it under the carpet. But obviously that didn't happen in this instance.
There are, however, issues about the Nigeria police, its officers and missing arms, which did not emanate from a report from the Auditor General's office. So how does the Inspector General handle such a reputation damage, which is known both locally and internationally? Furthermore, the year after, Amnesty International published its corruption and human rights abuse report, and year after year, the Nigerian police gets fingered for corruption, including its personal selling of arms to criminals and for human rights abuse.
I did recommend to the IGP to set up a committee to do an in-house investigation and identify all the lapses and start the process of correcting those lapses. Now, beyond him, I believe that the Minister of Police Affairs, who is the responsible ministry for overseeing the Nigerian Police Force, should work together with the Police Trust Fund and to an extent the PSC, Police Service Commission, to look into critical areas, including the behavior and conduct of our police officers. I believe that there is a need to identify bad eggs within the system. The process of identifying those bad eggs should be meticulous. There are red flags that are visible. If the police officer is a drug addict, is a drunkard, then he can do anything when he's in need of that. So that process need to be conducted by the supervisory agencies. Then the National Assembly too would need to come in. They started the process by inviting the MPF to have a conversation regarding that audit report, but they need to take it a step further by ensuring that they identify every aspect of that audit report, all the audit queries listed must be answered. And I hear there are about 7 or 8 of those audit queries. They must be answered by the Nigerian police force. Nothing should be swept under the carpet. The moment they are answered, if the answers are satisfactory, we leave it at that. If they are not satisfactory, by right of its oversight authority as well as its legislative authority, the National Assembly can create the change that we need. At the end of the day, we need an improvement in our policing functions, and this is the beginning. If we are going to get it right, we need to make sure we are forthright in the conclusions. All of these 3 components that I've mentioned, they have a role to play. And of course, I'm very delighted that the Fourth Estate of the realm is also playing its role. Let's not allow this matter to die. The media should continue to talk about it until we see the right changes that we need. Civil society organizations, our development partners should also come in. We may need their support in certain instances, training on the right way to manage armories. It's one way that our development partners and civil society organizations can come in to support us in that regard.
It may be that the Inspector General is working to reposition the police. It may be that he feels bad that the report and its public debate could overlook his efforts. It is doubtful, though, that what is already known could do more damage because the Auditor General's office provided numbers and the Parliament wants to debate and find a solution to the challenge.
The response of most chief executives in Nigeria, when things like this happen, they are more concerned about the damage it can have on their reputation and not necessarily the impact of what is being discovered. And so, our advice to him is to be the man in the mirror and tell himself the truth. All of these issues are well documented. We're not saying he's responsible for it. He inherited most of them, but he now has an opportunity more than anyone to correct what is wrong. And so, be the man in the mirror. Set up an investigative committee and identify the gaps, the lapses within the system, and try to correct them. We've mentioned some of them: the armories, the process of running the armories themselves. I mean, think about it. The moment you leave perhaps the city centers and you start going into the hinterlands, most of the police facilities don't have armories that have integrity. All it takes for a criminal to do is to break a wall in any of the police divisions, and he's right inside the armory, and they now steal the weapons from them. That's just one part, but there are several other components. So he needs to set up that committee that would look into all of the processes and then start correcting them. The ones that are low-hanging fruits that he can correct immediately, let him do so. The ones that need a more strategic revision of the police processes, then he may need to engage with the Minister of Police Affairs and the National Assembly to see how these changes can be done. But it's not about denial, and it's not about indicating reputational damage. It's bigger than that. It's the future of Nigeria, it's public security, and it's an improvement in national security.
For many years, the Nigerian public has been one in campaigning for better equipment, training and remuneration for personnel of the police force. This has been an open and concerted campaign.
Because this army must have gone to hands of unauthorized persons, might be criminals, and they will use them for criminal activity, which is going to be a threat to the society, threat to life and property, and also, so it's not very palatable news that we should be happy about. And I think also go to underscore the point that maybe there's laxity in the supervision and control of arms in the police, because police have a procedure, standard procedure of controlling arms and ammunition in their custody. They have a very well equipped armory. At the station, they have what they call a rack, where the arms are stocked, and nobody can remove it, they say, because they might have a key to lock it. And when the police officers sign to men go for it, they sign for them. Arms and ammunition, they sign for the common, they sign out and sign in. So in that case, maybe they are lapsed in terms of supervision, because the armorer is supposed to be supervised. There ought to be regular check of the armory, the arm register, and check the armory and so forth. So I think, but now the IG has promised to do something.
I think we need to be a bit broad-minded in the conclusions. So among those weapons, it's possible that some of them their shelf lives have expired, and so they are meant to be discarded, as it were. But there is a process for doing that. And that's one category. The other category are categories that criminals, especially violent criminals, attack police officers and steal weapons from them. This is well documented. The third category, which is the one that I know has received a lot of public attention, is the possibility that some of the security police personnel are either hiring or selling their weapons to criminals to use them to engage in criminal activities. And so all of these 4 or 5 categories that I've mentioned would have led to this number that we see.
Should the institution for which the public is investing its support not also be held to account? Can it be rationalized that getting the Nigerian public to know how the arms purchased for the police are used or misused undermines national security? Nigerians can begin to trust a clean, accountable police force, knowing that the arms and ammunition bought for the public safety and security do not end up in the hands of those who kill and make life unbearable for the citizens.
Thank you, Nasiru. We hope that the #1 police officer comes up with the outcome of his own investigation on these missing arms. But from where do we begin the next story? On Easter Sunday, when the entire Christendom celebrated the story of the resurrection of Jesus Christ, tears, stories of shame and pain issued from church pulpits across Benue and Plateau states. In Plateau State, a micromanaged number of 100 people were reported to have been killed like animals in 2 separate attacks. Like in Plateau State, the attacks in Benue have been unending and the cost in human lives alarming. 360 correspondent raises questions if Nigeria's insecurity is not the burden of the poor and the ordinary citizens. Will it not be an understatement to say that Nigeria's festering insecurity has become a national shame, if not an international embarrassment? The fact is that more than shame and embarrassment, Nigeria's insecurity has become the burden of its ordinary poor population. The burden is taking its toll in the lives of ordinary community members in Plateau, Benue, Zamfara, Sokoto, Katsina, and Niger states, wasted on daily basis.
I learned that there are over 30 fighters. They call them bandits. They call them terrorists in Zamfara state alone. Then I began to ask myself, if you have 30 fighters that carry guns, whether you call them Fulani herdsmen, whether you call them bandits, whether you call them any kind of... And there are, yes, 30,000 fighters. If you have 30,000 fighters in Zamfara alone, then you begin to wonder, how many fighters do you have in Katsina, in Borno State, in Sokoto State, and things of that nature?
The doubtful position of Western media, the United Nations, and those who care to reference their argument is that these killings arise from climate change-induced migrations that cause conflicts between herders and crop farmers. This line of argument wobbles in the face of the fact that the Plateau State crisis began with the bombing of Jos Main Market, the most modern market in northern Nigeria, in 2001. That was unlikely to be herders-farmers clash, climate change-induced conflicts, and since then, the killing, burning of entire communities in Plateau State has not stopped. There are those who have analyzed the situation as a passing phase in Nigeria's development journey. Mention of population and cultures naturally bring about conflicts and deaths as sacrifices towards the emergence of a uniform, harmonized societal culture. So it is a development phase.
We do not have a leader that we can run to. And so no blood. When we talk about the blood of these people, I will have the blood of Mr. President shed in the name of having a better society. If we are to talk about any blood that should be shed for better society, it should be the blood of our leaders. Do we have the blood of their children that are schooling abroad, shed for the better society we're talking about?
The irony, however, is that just in 1 week in Bassa district and Bokos of Plateau State, A micromanaged number of 110 people were killed by a herd of AK-47 wielding invaders who had no known conflicts with the communities. The pattern is the same. In the dead of the night, while community members sleep, invaders in their hundreds, carrying flaming torches or other inflammable materials, descend on homesteads, setting them on fire, and those of them carrying sophisticated rifle gun down anybody trying to escape. Each round of invasion and killings bring about unconvincing reaction from both the federal and state governments, as if there is a conspiracy to sacrifice poor Nigerians.
We have great leaders that fought for our independence. That should amount to a better society. What we are having today is corrupt leaders. Why we are here today is because of the corruption in our system, the corruption in our institutions, and that is why you see somebody like Mr. President will still sit in power and have a Senate President talk to Nigerians that while you are protesting, we will be eating. That is a statement that in the same society, such a leader should not appear even in the corridor of power.
Under the Buhari government, which seems to have ignored insecurity, if not endorsed it, the president told the Plateau State government to go back and make peace with their neighbors. With the recent killings in Plateau State, the federal government has also told the Plateau State government to seek accommodation with its neighbors. All these are a euphemism for ceding land to the Fulani Heather population. But should it be the way out in modern Nigeria?
It is failure on the part of the government to bring justice to the innocent people. And that is why an innocent farmer will choose to defend himself. And instead of prioritizing his safety and the properties that he so much care for, he would rather be jailed for speaking out or for protecting his farmlands.
If Plateau and Benue are matters of access to land, what is happening in Katsina, Niger, Sokoto, Zamfara, and Enugu? There is the temptation to reason that the Nigerian government has not placed its fingers on the source of the challenge of insecurity, that is not a scourge for the nation, it is just climate change. Is it an ethnic expansion agenda which is not feasible in modern Nigeria, even with 1 million deaths? Is there an external dimension to it all, stoking the crisis to divert vital resources to development, to pursuing the problem of insecurity?
Now, who are the herdsmen in Benue State? It is the elite. Who are the people killing the people? It is the government. Because the government who has failed to identify the problems is the problem. Some of the traditional rulers are the problems. They have cattle. They are the one that imported the herdsmen to come and take care of their cattle. They tell you that they have killed cattle. Some of the traditional rulers are even, and the elite that owns these cattle are the one that are even empowering these herders. How do herders know about the purchase of AK-47? How do herders begin to know about kidnapping? These are not the traditional lifestyles of herders.
The questions for going become realistic following the spreading nature of Nigeria's insecurity. Just last Tuesday, in New Karu area of Karu local government area of Nasarawa State, a young family was attacked around 11 o'clock in the night. The attackers were kidnappers who could not gain access through the well-built gate to the premises. They broke the wall down, shut and destroyed the windows because the house had security doors. While they shot to destroy the windows, the man of the house escaped to alert the vigilante office and the police. Nobody responded until over 1 hour after the kidnappers took the man's 2 children. They left the wife because she was heavy with pregnancy. By Friday, the kidnappers had contacted the man for ransom. He paid and his children were released to him. He said to 360 Nigeria, government does not protect the poor, only God protects.
So the military works under very stringent, unfortunately, very stringent conditions. You deploy somebody to an operational area. The basic thing is 6 months, then you redeploy. But we are overwhelmed. A lot of work has to be done. And now, when you now remove him after 6 months, there's a problem somewhere else. You redeploy the person. Now there is this issue of doing a kind of training. You are recruiting 1,000 every year. Now, while that is good on its part, now training for the military, it took me 5 years in NDA, and since I've been going for training for over 20 years, different training, the training has to be holistic. So we now say, okay, I recruit somebody for 6 months, I take him to the war front. It is not holistic. So that is why there are gaps, there are challenges.
There are worries that Nigeria's political elite, for whose security government makes it a main concern, is the very group creating the nation's security challenge. So they are protected to keep them safe, to then spread insecurity in the country. In other words, the blood of the innocent spilled in Plateau State, the families left distraught in Benue State, and communities in Katsina, Zamfara, Niger, Anambra, and Edo are all in pursuit of power. If this is true, what manner of power elite does Nigeria have?
We have not seen enough actions of the government, so terrorists and criminal elements have been emboldened to take more guns.
Former Nigerian Chief of Army Staff and Defense Minister, retired General T.Y. Njuma, says he can bet his remaining breath that the Nigerian security personnel are part of those spreading death across the country. He has called on Nigerians to rise, arm and defend themselves. As some people have called Njuma's solution a recipe for violence, as if violence is not just abroad. The Director General of the Directorate of State Services, DSS, Adeola Oluwatosin Ajayi, has recommended a final solution to Nigeria's insecurity.
Our culture is communal. We do things together, festival together, ceremonies together, wedding ceremony, whatever. So why can't we fight some miscreants, some charlatans among us together? The community should say, you cannot come here. This is what Tafawa Balewa has done. If you go to that community to attack them, you'll be sorry for yourself. I challenge anybody to try it. And this is the way we have to do. We have to allow some level of armament for the communities, and they can serve as the first line of defense.
The current insecurity challenge which Nigeria is facing seems to be making sense of the argument that if the ordinary Nigerians cannot get a leadership they need and want through the ballot box because the political elite has captured, if not kidnapped, the process, then they need to try other means. That other means, don't ask. Thank you, but someone said to me that before Nigeria can respond successfully to its insecurity challenge, it must understand the sources and the drivers. We hope that our leadership can do that sooner than later. This is 360 Nigeria, your close-up program on critical issues in the Nigerian polity. We'll take a break and return shortly. Please don't go away.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, We will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Welcome back. It is a common saying that to whom much is given, much is expected. In recent times, Nigeria's local governments have been given so much. They now get much more revenue from the Federation account than any other time in recent history. The Supreme Court has also freed them from the apron string of the governors by granting financial autonomy to the local governments. It appears, however, that it is all motion without movement. As correspondent Chimezie Zedima examines the issue of the local government finances, budgets, and their refusal to open account with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Between October 2024 and February 2025, Nigeria's local government received an average of 400 billion naira each month. That was a massive over 30% increase compared to the pre-Tinubu administration. In July 2024, the Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment, granted the local government their financial autonomy. The Supreme Court, in justifying its position, stated that the demands of the justice require a progressive interpretation of the law. It is the position of this court that the Federation can pay local government areas allocation to the local government directly or pay them through the states. In this case, since paying them through the state has not worked, justice of this case demands that local government area allocations from the Federation account should henceforth be paid directly to the local government areas.
Money due to local government shall be paid through the joint account, but that provision was considered to be a discretionary provision, meaning it can be tinkered with.
An iconic judgment that has restored grassroots democracy.
Now is granted. The local government chairman, if elected, he will get his money, he will sit down and design the budget, him and his councillors, and do whatever the people require from his own local government.
The last Supreme Court judgment, you see that you don't subject the verdict of a court to negotiation. It is not whether I like it, or you love it, or you don't like it. It is mandatory, and that the highest court of the land has ruled that, look, henceforth, make sure that you pay these monies directly to 774 local government councils who have a duly elected officials. Now it is federal government who went to court. And it is the same federal government that is in custody of the funds. So what are we saying? So you got what you wanted from court, and then you have refused to act. Every day we keep hearing that the federal government is meeting with state governors, is meeting with local government. I wonder what they are negotiating. Are you negotiating that, oh, you don't want to adhere to the ruling because you do not need a moratorium period to execute judgment of a competent, no less a court than the Supreme Court?
If the state governments are still going to conduct the local government elections, there's no amount of independence you give to people that will make meaning. Because the man is not there on his own. The man was handpicked. He was bankrolled by the emperor, that is the governor, in that state. So how does he say no to the governor? And how does he prepare what we call budget? Budget, like you know, it's a financial plan by an organization on how they intend to utilize the funds, for the period of the budgeting. But these are not independent people. So they don't even have that freedom of saying that, oh, this is what we want to do with the money in this year or this month. So we have to address the root cause of the independence at that tier of government.
There was good reason for Nigerians to celebrate.
As a third tier of government, the local government has been rendered ineffective, inefficient, corrupt, and politicized by the state governments. The local government only served as an instrument for state government to ambush federal allocation for whatever use the governors fancied. By the Supreme Court ruling, the state government should no longer have access to the local government allocation from the federation account. As of this afternoon, every state government in Nigeria still gets the local government allocation against the very pronouncement of the Supreme Court.
The allocation for local government is still paid into the state joint account. So every month, their monies is paid into the state joint account managed by state government. So even after the Supreme Court ruling, nothing has changed. That is why stakeholders are coming together to say that, look, there is a unanimity. If you recall the kind of celebration that greeted the Supreme Court judgment by Nigerians, and people say, oh, this is the best thing that this government of Tinubu has done to Nigerians. So, but the federal government is beginning to take a position that would water down this high point they have scored by securing that judgment.
Only agency of government that enforces law, they are all in the hands of the federal government. That is Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So if he wants the local government to work, he can leverage on the judgment passed by the various courts and then enforce the functioning of the local government. But it's not in his interest too. It's not in the interest of Bola Tinubu for local government to function, because he is also interested in the arbitrariness and the crime, that organized crime that is happening, because that's how they also get their votes.
The impunity of the state governors to act against the pronouncement of the Supreme Court is only one layer of the burden that the local government now carries. The Central Bank of Nigeria, in a move to provide a banking platform for the receipt of local government allocations to the councils, has requested the local government to open accounts with their Apex Bank. As of this afternoon, not one local government has opened an account. Again, the culture of impunity is either by the local government chairmen and their councils or manipulated by the state government. Nigerians may have celebrated too quickly.
Well, for now, I have not heard of any official communication that local government should go and open accounts with CBN. I hear about the speculations that local government have been asked, but I have verified even from my own local government chairman that they have not received any official communication to go to the branch of CBN in their states to open an account.
Because of the huge public revenue now going to the local government, many Nigerians have advocated for more accountability. By the provisions of the Constitution, local governments are to provide primary health services, construct roads, run primary education, develop and maintain markets, and attend to the development needs of local communities. These responsibilities are to be executed transparently and in an accountable manner. To do so require budgeting for effective monitoring and tracking, and ensuring that huge public resources are deployed to meet the real needs of the people. Unfortunately, no local government plan produces or presents budgets.
It is not true that many local governments don't present budgets. The truth of the matter is that all local government councils in Nigeria present budget, have approved budgets, but you see, it's the process through which they do their budgeting system that differs. Some local government allow the Ministry for Local Government to do budgets for them and then approve. But you see, the standard procedure is that the executive arm of each local government council make appropriation estimates, present to the legislative council of the local government, and then it approves, and then the chairman will sign and becomes an act.
So what is happening in most local government, first, it has to do with the issues around autonomy of the local government. The local government, as we speak today, is not autonomous, so that affects the operational guidelines of the local government.
So in order to fulfill that Supreme Court decision, it is mandatory for local government to make its own budget for itself, rather than going or relying on what the states approve for them.
If the budgets are presented through the state government ministries and the budgets are not known to the public, how do residents of any local government monitor how funds meant for their well-being get spent? The challenge here goes to the roots of the definition of local government by Nigeria's political leadership. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, shortly after the July 11, 2024 Supreme Court ruling granting financial autonomy to local governments, pacified angry state governors that he would not take their local governments out of their control. In other words, political leaders don't see the local government as an independent tier of government, but as part of their political structure to control and use for winning elections and staying in power.
All the judgment you can pass, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't change anything until you change the way elections are conducted in this country. And until votes start counting, if the votes do not count, there's no way anything can happen in the manner and the way you are thinking it will happen. Even Mr. President himself is afraid of the governors. Because I remember the last meeting he had was there in Lagos. He was appealing to them and then telling them that he's not going to interfere with their state matters. That the local governments are in their pockets. They can do whatever they like with it. And he's not going to interfere. So if the man who has the power to enforce says he's not going to enforce, okay, you can go to court, you can go to wherever you want to go to. The judges can pass whatever judgment they want to pass. Who is going to enforce it?
First thing solution, implement fully the judgment of the Supreme Court. And then closely related to that as a solution is that the National Assembly must amend the Constitution to grant full financial and administrative autonomy to the local government.
Agora Policy Forum, a public policy think tank funded by the MacArthur Foundations, says revenue generation, accountability, service delivery, and effectiveness are the indices of good governance at the local government level. But how can these be realized when local government is seen only as a political structure and not a tier of government? How can there be governance at the local government level when there is no budget? How can residents know, log into, and monitor how much is allocated to the local government and how much is budgeted for what? Autonomy for the local governments and the budget that should accompany them are in the Supreme Court's documents. For now, neither President Bola Ahmed Tinubu nor the state governments want the local governments to be free. Such freedom will make more meaning to Nigeria's democracy, which they do not want. In Abuja, I am Chimize Zedima for 360 Nigeria.
Well, of Chimezie, it appears that it is the political leadership and not the political structure that is the reason for underdevelopment in the local government areas. Maybe judicial activism will bring them to govern according to the Constitution and law. For this Wednesday, our last story focuses on Nigeria's new education structure. Does the hood make the monk, or can you change the taste of the wine just by changing the wine skin? The Nigerian government seems to want to improve education in the country by simply changing the structure. It is like keeping the quality of wine and simply changing the bottle and expecting a change in the taste. Again, 360 correspondent Chimeze Zedima has been battling to understand what Nigeria's new education structure is set out to achieve. At an extraordinary meeting of the National Council on Education held in Abuja, Minister of Education Tunji Alausa announced what he called a major overhaul of Nigeria's education system. By that overhaul, compulsory basic education will now be 12 years instead of 9. The new change means that the government is throwing away the present 6334 system, which provides for 9 years of compulsory basic education. The minister explained that the new framework will have a 12-4 structure, effectively merging primary and secondary education.
What we're saying is that we need to move from what we have now as 9 years compulsory education to 12 years of compulsory education as it's obtained in other parts of the world.
According to the minister, the 12-4 structure aims to provide students with continuous learning until they turn 16, after which they can pursue higher education, a clear indication that the government doesn't want children with high intelligence quotient to access higher education until they are 16. By integrating secondary education into the basic education framework, Dr. Alausa said government hopes to improve learning outcomes, reduce dropout rates, and enhance the overall quality of education.
If you look back into the history of Nigeria, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people that went through the primary education then and got up to standard 6. If you compare the level of education, the level of instruction, even at standard 3 then, it's much better than what we get in GSS 3 now. Main contest of 6 years of primary school, 3 years of junior secondary school, and 3 years of senior secondary school.
It is doubtful that these expected outcomes will be realized, given that school enrollment, school dropout, and quality of education in Nigeria are driven by not structure, but poverty, culture, and underfunding. The minister, however, says that the new education structure will align Nigeria's education system with international standards, fostering better education outcomes and global competitiveness. The new system also promises to facilitate early exposure to vocational and entrepreneurial skills, preparing students for both higher education and employment.
These priority interventions within Nigeria's education sector renewal initiative include aggressively expanding STEM education, putting a lot of focus on a technical vocational education training with an 80-20% approach to vocational training in collaboration with partners and private sectors. We also are moving quickly to address the high burden of our out-of-school children and also improve on our current strategies on expanding more education to our girl child children. Our fifth high priority area is on data and digitalization, as well as education quality assurance.
Will there be improvements in the quality of education that will be offered? That is left to be seen, because teachers will need to be trained. Expectations at each level would have to be met. What should a primary 3 child be able to do? What should a primary 6 child be able to do? What do you put in place before a child leaves primary or secondary, so that you can immediately, 2 years before or 3 years before a child fails, their results indicate? If a child is not doing well in primary 3 and primary 4, chances are that by the time they get to primary 6, unless a structure is put in place to intervene in that process of failure, they're going to fail in primary 6. So by the time they are leaving the 12-year program, which is at the end of SS3, they have very good quality education that allows them to thrive in the society, even if they choose not to go to the university.
It's a very good handwork for a child. Like formally, if you see some students finish their secondary school, university without handwork. I was even telling one guy, it's only people that study in as medical personnel that have handworks. People that study as teachers, as education section, that have handworks. If you just went and study, what do they call it? Political science. It's not a handwork. You just come out with a certificate and you'll be looking for a job. And the government, thank God, they have seen what our children are passing through. Implementing learner trade today is a welcome idea.
Nigeria at present operates the 6334 system of education, where a child enrolls in school at age 6 and undergoes 6 years of primary education, 3 years of junior education, 3 years of secondary education, and a minimum of 4 years of tertiary education. By the end of this educational journey, students are expected to be 18 years old and equipped with the knowledge, skills, and competences necessary to succeed in their chosen careers or further education pursued. The federal government's announcement of a new education policy has sparked widespread interest and debate. As the country prepares to transit from the 6334 framework to a 12-4 system, many are wondering what other pressing issues this new policy will address.
I think the benefit is that when you find people who went to school who say, oh, I'm literate, then they're able to read properly, they're able to write, they're able to comprehend. The society is the better for it, because then that means that a child can't say, I'm no longer going to school until they finish SS3. A parent cannot say, I'm keeping my child at home. He's going to learn trading or learn tailoring until he finishes SS3. So I think there will be more literate people in the society, which will advance our cause as a country. And I also think that what that would mean is that we will feel the impact of literacy on different areas of our lives.
Nigeria, since independence, has focused on developing an education system that will foster national unity and drive socio-economic growth. This vision led to the introduction of several education policies and reforms. One notable achievement was the establishment of the Universal Primary Education UPE program in 1976. This initiative aimed to provide free and compulsory education to all Nigerian children, promoting equal access to quality education and bridging the gap between different regions and socio-economic groups. The UPE program was a significant milestone in Nigeria's education reform journey. It built on the foundation laid by the National Policy on Education, which was first introduced in 1977. The policy emphasized the importance of education in national development and outlined strategies for improving education quality, accessibility, and relevance. Nigeria's latest education has generated interest in its potential to support students with special needs, aligning with the country's commitment to achieving Sustainable Development Goal Target 4.5. Target 4.5 aims to eliminate gender disparities in education and ensure equal access to all levels of education and vocational training for vulnerable groups, including persons with disabilities. The new policy is expected to present an opportunity to build on past efforts and make meaningful progress in promoting inclusive education. Will the government seize the chance to create a more inclusive and equitable education system?
First and foremost, the schools are not enough. The schools are not funded. The ones that exist that are not enough are not funded enough, to meet the needs of the children that they even have been enrolled. Communities do not have enough schools. So even if today every child out of school, every girl child, or even disabled children, decide that, okay, we're going to go to school, we don't have enough schools to accommodate everyone, and we don't have enough funds allocated to the system to make it run inclusively, so and that's what I mean by, I'm not sure it will have much of an impact, right now. I don't know about in the future, as things unfold and challenges arise and we mount them, and we surmount them. So, anything can happen. But right now, I don't think we have enough machinery to include every child's needs, children out of school, the girl child, the disabled child, the child from low-income families, the ones who don't eat, who don't have food to eat to even go to school.
The success of the 12-4 education structure will depend on its ability to address the unique needs of the sector, become relevant, and remain accessible and inclusive. Thank you, 360 correspondent. It's been a full day for you and an exciting 1 hour for me too. I hope you also enjoyed the program. Next Wednesday is another date. I am Josephine Bitrus. Have a very good afternoon.
360 Nigeria, tracking issues in the polity.